Captain America Civil War. Now, the storyline, the comic book that it is based off of, is my all-time personal favorite comic book storyline. I think that the job that those writers and illustrators were able to do as far as capturing the perfect essence of hero versus hero conflict is fantastic. Now, Joe and Anthony Russo had quite a feat to accomplish with this movie, and they successfully did it without a doubt, in my mind, 100%. Now, Civil War is my all-time favorite comic line, and so to see this movie come to screen, to come to life, I never thought it would happen.
My excitement for Civil War was beyond anything I can even remember. I almost blacked out when I found out that they were actually bringing this comic book arc to life.
Civil War was probably my most anticipated superhero movie of all time, honestly. I can honestly say that because you had SpiderMan in there, my favorite comic book character. Even though I didn't know much about Black Panther, just the anticipation of wanting to see that character, how great the story looked. You got Tony and Cap going at each other. I honestly, up until this point, was never excited for a movie as much as I was for this as far as comic book movie goes.
The biggest question going into Civil War was, were they going to be able to capture the brutality and you know, really show us, hey, these heroes aren't kidding around, like, you know, it's not just, hey, let's play fight a little bit. Like, are they actually going to be able to show us that? To me personally, like, I am 100% satisfied with the way they did that. They showed the brutality of these characters. These characters were full on going after each other.
So as far as the team shaked out, by the time we have everybody running at each other at the airport scene, for the most part, all of the sides made sense. The only one I was never sure about was Black Widow. I wasn't sure exactly why she was on Tony's side, and I didn't know why she would fight Hawkeye, one of her best friends. And I know they didn't really seriously go at each other in this movie. They weren't trying to kill each other, but I was just never sure about that. And it also showed once she actually turns on that team. So it makes sense that she was the one I wasn't sure about.
The introduction to Black Panther, I think, was done perfectly. I liked the fact that we didn't get a typical origin movie where we get introduced to the character, that it almost kind of like added to Civil War in the sense that we got to meet this character with all this other stuff going on, but it didn't take away from the storyline.
As I'm watching Civil War, the whole time, even though I wasn't trying not to do this, it's like, where's Spider-Man? Where's Spider-Man? Where's Spider-Man? And then we see, you know, the Queens, New York thing on there, and that was amazing. I loved his introduction because I like how they gave us Peter Parker in his apartment with his aunt. You got to meet him, and it wasn't too long, and just that apartment scene I could watch over and over again. And you got the best of both worlds. You got him in his apartment, you got him as Spider-Man doing the action. I thought that was so cool, and he has some of the best one-liners during the action fight when he's fighting Falcon and Bucky. He just says some of the greatest lines, and that's Spider-Man. He says crazy things when he's fighting you, so I honestly love this introduction to Spider-Man.
The villain, I thought, was good in terms of his motivation. The execution of it, I can't get past it. I can't get past the way everything he did. He just had to rely on so much coincidence and luck and just almost randomness for his plan to work. And it just, sometimes, just for me, I just have a problem getting past that. I still will throw the movie on and watch it and enjoy it for the action and even some of the comedic beats. And I actually think that Zemo is a good villain. I'm glad he's still alive, and I really hope they use him again. Daniel Bruhl's a great actor, and I think he brings a lot to that character.
I don't think anyone necessarily had to die in this storyline to show that there are stakes, but I think it would have had a huge impact on the film. Even though I didn't want Rhodey to die, I think that would have had such big impact on the whole thing, even though it might have escalated Tony to be even more crazy and maybe even murder some other Avengers. But I do think it would have just carried on and been a huge consequence going forward. Yes, Rhodey did get paralyzed, and that might be a big enough consequence to go forward, but the biggest consequence is that the team was torn apart. And from that moment on, from those moments on in that film, they're never going to be the same.
Captain America Civil War I think it is very much a Captain America movie. I thought a lot of people think that Iron Man was going to take it over and it's going to be, people call it Avengers 2.5, and I understand that, but it's centered around Captain America and the conflict he's facing, that he's been facing since he's woken up in modern times, about authority versus his own agenda and his friends and his loyalty to his friends, and where does he lie in that?
Look, there are many scenes in this movie that are great. There are many partnerships in this movie that are just so good. But that airport battle can never be topped. I gotta say it right now, before Infinity War comes out, there's probably gonna be something that tops that. But as far as right now in the MCU, that airport battle is #1 for me. The fact that you see these two teams just charging at each other, the music in the background, the way that the Russos put the camera angles as far as characters versus character, then you get the wide shot of them just coming together, it gives me chills just thinking about it.
So the one thing that I think about when I think of Civil War, the moment in the film that took it to another level and elevated it to genius level for me, is the moment when Tony finds out that Winter Soldier killed his parents. I was honestly in shock. Figuratively, my jaw was on the floor. I could not believe it when it happened. And the look on Robert Downey Jr.'s face when he finds out what happens is honestly incredible. Phenomenal acting, and the action scene that it leads to is amazing.
I actually think the tunnel chase when Captain America goes to try to confront Bucky and find out just what exactly is going on at his apartment in Bucharest, that's my favorite scene in the movie. I think that's outstanding.
I think the one thing everyone remembers from Civil War is the airport scene. It's one of the best scenes to ever come across our screens in the MCU, and it's just phenomenal. And it's not short either. It's a long fight scene, and it just keeps going and going.
Now, I know a lot of people question the fact that this movie could have been 2-3 movies, a big arc in the MCU. I wholeheartedly agree. I completely sympathize and agree with them that this movie definitely could have been expanded through a couple movies. But who says it's not going to be? I think that those who think that this conflict was wrapped up in Civil War are 100% wrong on that, because we don't see Captain America with Iron Man in Infinity War. We don't see Black Widow with Iron Man in Infinity War. There is still a giant rift between these characters. Sure, as Cap said at the end of Civil War, if you need us, Tony, we'll be there. Here's a flip phone in case you need to call me. But there is still a giant conflict. Captain America has ripped off his stars on his uniform. He's no longer fighting with the Avengers. He's no longer fighting with Tony. So that conflict of what happened in that movie is still there.
I am not surprised to see Civil War at #3. I might have it in the #2 spot, and I might put it #1. I had a hard time deciding between my #1 and Civil War, and I sometimes think Civil War might be the best comic book movie of all time. But I do think with our group of guys, the people voting on our team, that the #3 spot definitely makes sense.
Am I satisfied with Civil War being ranked 3rd on our list? Hell yeah. I think that it definitely deserves top 3 in this universe. Depending on who you talk to, maybe a top 2. But I think the top 3 movies can be switched any day of the week, to be quite honest. They're all absolutely fantastic. But I do think 3rd is a great spot for it, because the 2 movies above it are just pretty much flawless in my opinion.
Civil War being ranked #3 on our list, that one's a tough one for me. I honestly, in the top 3, move all those movies around depending on my mood. It's really, really tough. I almost want to move it to #2 and push the Avengers down, but you know, it's a tough one. It's really, honestly, these top 3 are just phenomenal movies in general, that any of them can be #1.